I never imagined my distress text would reach a billionaire before my labor in the elevator. The day began normal. Just me, another day at work, another day of pushing papers, answering calls, and dreaming of a life that felt so far away. But then it happened. The elevator doors slid shut, and suddenly, I was trapped. The lights flickered above me, throwing shadows that danced like frantic ghosts. My heart raced as I tried to calm my breathing. I thought about my family. My mom's fragile health, my brother's college fund. I could feel the walls closing in, the air thickening like a fog I couldn't push through. I reached for my phone. Desperation surged through me. I typed a simple text, "Help. I'm stuck in the elevator." It was reckless. A shot in the dark. But as my thumb hovered over the send button, a strange thought crossed my mind: who would even care? Would it reach someone who could actually help? I took a breath, and with trembling hands, I hit send. Seconds ticked by, each one feeling like an eternity. The silence in the elevator churned, echoing my panic. I could hear my heartbeat loud in my ears, a drum of dread pounding. Then, the vibrations of my phone broke through. A reply. The name startled me. Jack Sinclair. A billionaire. The guy who owned half the city and all the headlines. I blinked, trying to comprehend how a man like that could be involved in my little crisis. His response was bizarrely quick: "Stay calm. Help is on the way." I felt warmth wash over me, mixing oddly with fear. Why was he even responding? Suddenly, a loud rumble echoed. My stomach dropped. What was happening? The lights flickered again. The air turned electric, charged with unspoken possibilities. Visions blurred in my mind, the world outside feeling surreal. It was just me, my phone, and a billionaire who had probably never experienced a moment like this. Who was this man? Why did he care? My heart clenched in anticipation, eager and fearful of what was nearly here, and then, I heard a voice, muffled, but unmistakable. "Is anyone in there?" The elevator shook. Everything felt like a movie about to reach a climax. My body surged with adrenaline. I was so close to a breakthrough or a complete disaster. Was I about to be saved? Or would this moment unravel into something I could never predict? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The echo of that voice shifted something deep inside me. Was it a hope I hadn't dared to feel? I leaned closer to the door, pressing my ear against the cool metal as if it could bring me closer to freedom. "Yes. I'm here." I yelled back, my voice trembling with a mix of fear and anticipation. "Hang tight. We're working on getting you out." The muffled voice promised, a beacon of reassurance amid my swirling thoughts. I pulled back, trying to wrap my mind around the notion that help was truly on the way, that a rescue was not just a fantasy. But as the seconds trickled into minutes, doubt crept back in. What if they couldn't get to me in time? What if the elevator malfunction led to something worse? I thought about my mom. I thought about my brother. I couldn't bear the thought of anything happening to me, of not being there for them. My heart clenched tighter, spiraling into the dark corners of my mind. Suddenly, my phone vibrated again. Another message from Jack Sinclair. "Don't give up. Breathe. Focus on something else. What do you dream about?" What do I dream about? The words sank into me like stones. I wanted to laugh. There was a part of me that wanted to pour out every aspiration, every wish that fluttered in the silence of my days. I wanted to tell him about my dreams of writing, of traveling, of finding a world beyond the walls of the office. But that world felt miles away, just like my estranged father, who had been an elusive figure my entire life, trapped in the memories of my childhood. That I hesitated, but the yearning within me demanded that I respond. I dream about being a writer, about making a difference. I sent the message, allowing the flicker of vulnerability to surface. Minutes passed, but it felt like an eternity. I could almost hear his thoughts, someone who had everything at his fingertips, taking the time to connect with someone like me. Jack's reply came almost immediately. You have the power to create your own path. It starts with courage. You've already taken the first step. His words wrapped around me like a blanket against the cold isolation of the elevator. I took a deep breath and tried to remember that feeling of bravery, the moment I pressed send on that distress message. It was a stark reminder that maybe I was worth rescuing, not just from physical confinement, but from the doubts that clouded my dreams. Tell me more about it, he typed next, a curiosity sparking in the digital space between us. I felt a warmth spread through me as I typed back about the stories I had always wanted to write, the characters that danced in my imagination. I found solace in the exchange, losing track of time and forgetting, if only for a moment, where I was. As I poured out my dreams, I could feel the tremors of uncertainty start to smoothen into hope. Just then, a louder bang jolted me back to reality. The elevator lurched again, and fear gripped me tightly. What if this was the moment it all went wrong? I returned to the door, shouting, "Is anyone there?" The muffled voice responded reassuringly, "We're almost there. Just a few more moments." But in those moments, my phone vibrated one last time. Jack had sent another message. "Stay strong. I'm on my way to you." The declaration held a strange weight. He was coming. But was he truly? My heart began to race for a new reason, weaving threads of curiosity into the fabric of my anxiety. Would I actually meet him? The thought sent my mind spiraling. I wanted to look presentable, to be something more than just a girl trapped in an elevator. The fear of meeting someone like him, someone who had it all, threatened to swallow me whole. But then, just as the cacophony of the outside world began to fade out, it shifted into silence, the type of silence that felt heavier than the noise that had just enveloped me. My phone vibrated again. This time, it was a call. The screen was shiny and bright. It was him. Jack Sinclair. My breath caught in my throat. What could I say? Would I just end up embarrassing myself? I stared at my phone, poised between the thrill of possibility and the weight of anxiety. Knowing this moment could change everything, and yet, I remained trapped. I took a breath, summoning every ounce of courage I had left. I had come this far. Would I really let this chance slip by? Before I could convince myself to decline, I swiped the button to accept, the sound of my heartbeat echoing in my ears as I shifted my reality from mere digital text into a fleeting fragment of fate. "Hello." I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. And just like that, everything shifted again as the voice on the other end said words that would haunt me, words that would bring me to my knees. "There's something you need to know about the elevator and about us." The air in the elevator felt thick, stifling, like it too was holding its breath. I felt myself teetering on the edge of something monumental, ready to plunge into a sea of secrets hidden just beneath the surface. My heartbeat pulsed in my ears, drowning out the voice on the other end of the phone, threatening to pull me under. "What do you mean?" I stammered, urgency lacing my voice. The part of me that wanted to cling to hope wrestled furiously with a growing dread. "Just please listen carefully," Jack said, his tone grave. "The elevator malfunction you experienced, it's not just a coincidence. There are people involved, people who," his words trailed off, drawing the thread of reality taut between us. "What are you saying?" I nearly shouted, anxiety clawing at my throat. My mind raced. Was this some elaborate setup? A twisted game? What people? People who want me to stop you from getting out. It's about the project we were both unknowingly involved in. Confusion washed over me like a tidal wave. My mind spun with fragmented memories of meetings long ago, hints of conversations wrapped in corporate jargon that had always left me feeling out of my depth. Project? Are you saying someone wants to silence me? Why? Because they're afraid of what you might reveal. Someone has been watching you, he continued, urgency now palpable in his voice. They want to ensure you don't become a threat to everything they've built. That I stumbled backward, my vision blurring with panic. Trapped in this steel box, I had thought my worst fears revolved around being physically stuck, but now psychological terror seeped in. The knowledge of being hunted off, being prey, was suffocating. But why? I don't have anything to say, yet, Jack countered gently, and I could almost hear him take a deep breath. They see potential where you don't. The stories you want to tell, they hold significance. People will listen. Why would they care about me? My voice cracked as I struggled to piece together the chaos of my thoughts. I'm just a girl who possesses something they fear, he said, and I could sense the warmth in his confidence, an unwavering flicker of hope. That's why I need to get to you. I'll make sure you get out, and then we can figure this out together. The gravity of his words settled heavily between us, a thread of fate binding us in our shared, inexplicable connection. I wanted to believe him, to trust in the hope he offered, but fear gnawed at my insides. What if they find you, too? What if you can't help me? A harsh clatter echoed beyond the elevator doors, echoing like the rattle of chains, and my heart raced anew. I'm not easy to find, Jack assured me, sincerity threading through his voice. We're both stronger than they realize. You won't face this alone. His pledge hung in the air, my pulse quickening at the thought of being so intertwined with another person's fate. For the first time, a glimmer of strength began to break through my trepidation, igniting a flicker of defiance within me. But it was quickly dampened by a sharp jolt as the elevator lurched. What was that? I gasped, clinging to the wall, a wave of fear washing over me anew. Had something gone catastrophically wrong? Stay calm, Jack urged, the steady cadence of his voice somehow grounding me. They're working on getting you out. You just need to hold on a little longer. I couldn't help but wonder how long that might be. Would help truly arrive, or was I ensnared in a web of danger, linked to Jack in ways I couldn't yet foresee? Moments bled into eternities, and the ensuing silence was punctuated only by the sound of my racing heart. Outside, a cacophony erupted, voices raised, the clashing of steel against steel like a distant thunderclap. The fear now danced alongside the fire of curiosity. Who were these people he spoke of? Jack broke through my spiraling thoughts once more. We're almost there. Just keep talking to me, he encouraged, and I could hear him trying to suppress the tension in his own voice. What do you remember most about your dreams of writing? What drives you? I bit my lip, uncertainty bubbling in my chest. Did I dare let my ambitions breach the walls of fear that had confined me? I just always felt I had stories to tell, I said quietly. Stories that could help people, that could somehow make a difference. I believe in those stories, Jack replied softly. I can help you find your voice. And together, well, make sure they do not silence you. His warmth enveloped me, a stark contrast to the chilling dread that lingered. Each heartbeat felt like a small rebellion, expanding against the confines of my collapse. Could it be true? The realization that I was meant to be more than just a victim lingered on the edges of possibility, like illuminating starlight in the darkness, but as if the universe sought to remind me of my plight. Just then, the lights flickered. The elevator's mechanical groans sounded ominously, and then silence. It was a heavy sort of silence, pressing down upon me, one that drew dread like a cloak. The last sound I heard was Jack's voice fraying in urgency, calling my name. And then nothing. Jack. My voice trembled in the void, my heart sinking as despair flooded my veins. Would I remain trapped forever? Transfixed between the echoes of danger, and a fleeting hope that nipped at the edge of my dreams? In that unsettling silence, the world outside the elevator felt like a distant memory, a life that had moved beyond my grasp. The remnants of Jack's voice, the lingering warmth of his belief in me, fought valiantly against the encroaching darkness that now enveloped my spirit. I took a deep breath, inhaling the musty air, grounded in the small steel box that felt larger than a prison cell. Jack. I whispered again, my heart hammering in my chest like a caged bird desperate for freedom. No response. I stared at the tiny sliver of light that slipped through the elevator doors, imagining whatever chaos awaited beyond. The dreams I had nurtured for so long began to crumble into uncertain shapes, shadows of a future that felt perpetually locked away. That I pressed my ear against the cool metal, straining to catch any noise beyond my sanctuary. Faint voices filtered through, muffled but urgent, hints of a battle outside my view. Help! I wanted to scream. I'm here. But I contained myself, drowning in the stillness instead, fearing that any sound I made would echo back to mean attempt at contact swallowed by the void. What would it matter? I, a girl with dreams tucked away like secrets, was up against unknown forces that sought to snuff out the flickers of my ambition. I felt small, inconsequential, and an overwhelming wave of frustration surged in me. Was this really how it was going to end, trapped in an elevator, left alone while the world continued on without me? Then, as I closed my eyes to shut out the despair, a memory flickered into focus. Not long ago, I had been seated in a small cafe with my notebook, scribbling stories that gnawed at the tendrils of my imagination. The barista, a young woman with warm eyes, had taken the time to read a few lines. She had smiled and shared her own hopes, her voice trembling with excitement, reflecting back my ambitions like a mirror. It was a moment of unexpected kindness. I could feel the warmth of those grounded exchanges pulling me from the depths of hopelessness. Write your story, she had urged. Your words are worth it. They matter. Why do you care? I had asked, half skeptical, half in awe of her sincerity. Because someone believed in mine, she had replied simply, her face glowing in the soft morning light. We have to uplift each other. As I reopened my eyes, heat spread through my chest. If those moments could exist amid the chaos, then perhaps this darkness was just a part of my story, not the ending itself. I would not let fear silence my voice. I would reclaim it. With a sudden rush of determination, I leaned closer to the elevator doors. Hey! I shouted, my voice stronger than it had felt in days. Can anyone hear me? I need help. The echoes bounced back, amplifying my growing resolve. Then, an unexpected sound, of faint clatter of footsteps reverberated through my makeshift prison. I pressed my forehead against the cool metal, trying to discern the source. I closed my eyes, whispering a small prayer for a voice to respond, stay calm. I'm coming. A man called from the other side, the urgency sharp in his tone. A flicker of hope ignited, racing through my veins. Please. I'm stuck in here, can you push the emergency button? He instructed, and I quickly scrambled to find it, my hand trembling. Pressing it sent a jolt through the elevator, a rush of electricity and hope combining in an exhilarating clash. That I did it. I pressed the button. I shouted, punctuating my words with a fierce determination, good. Keep talking to me, he encouraged, and I imagined him as an anchor, tethering me to this moment of potential freedom. What's your name? I managed to ask between erratic breaths. Lucas, he replied. I have to get you out, just hold on. As Lucas worked to free me, part of me agonized over Jack. The absence of his grounding presence felt like a gaping wound. Was he safe? Would he still find his way to me if I escaped this small prison? Suddenly, Lucas echoed a stark warning through the door. They're trying to shut the power down. You need to stay alert. My heart dropped, a renewed fear clawing at my mind. Who are they? Do they mean to stop me? I don't know what they want, but they want win. We will get you out. His voice rang with conviction, and it sparked a courage in me. What if I really could rise above these shadows? What if this wasn't just about escaping an elevator but a battle to reclaim my existence, my voice? Jack said they were afraid of what I might reveal. I volunteered, desperation manifesting in the words. You didn't even know I mattered to anyone. You matter, Lucas affirmed, the sincerity in his tone a cocoon of comfort. We all have our part in this world, whatever battles we're up against. But before I could respond, the lights flickered again. An ominous churn filled the small space, and the metal walls shuddered beneath my fingertips. I could feel my heart racing not only in fear but in anticipation. And then, as if responding to the mounting chaos, the elevator lurched downward. My breath caught, the sound of rushing darkness enveloping me as gravity's cruel grip threatened to swallow my hope whole. No. The word escaped my lips, a raw, instinctual plea against the encroaching despair. Hold on. Lucas' voice boomed, but the sound of static drowned out his reassurance as the lights blinked out entirely. In that heart-stopping moment, I realized my only ally was the flicker of hope kindled within me. Would I break free? Would I drown in the depths of my fears? As the metal groaned and the world faded, I felt the weight of all my choices rushing to the surface. Would I fight, or would I let go? And then came the silence again, thick and consuming. In that quiet, an unexpected truth settled. This was no longer merely about survival. It was about awakening what had long been buried within. And just before I succumbed to the darkness, a sudden crash echoed from above, splintering the silence and unleashing the beginnings of possibility. The jarring crash above reverberated through the cold metal of the elevator, the sound giving life to the stillness that had settled like a heavy blanket. My heart raced, pounding like a wild drum as I strained to hear any follow-up sounds that might suggest rescue was on the way or danger further up. Lucas. I called out, every ounce of desperation colored my voice. What was that? I don't know. He yelled back, his voice a lifeline amid the uncertainty. But I'm working as fast as I can. Keep talking to me. Breath hitching in my throat, I pressed my palm against the elevator door, a small act of solidarity with Lucas, as if he could somehow feel my pulse against the cold metal. Okay. You don't know what to say. Just tell me you're still there. That I am here, he assured me, and anger sliced through my fear with a sharp edge. My frustration at being trapped surged with newfound energy. Why are they doing this? Who are they? I managed to whisper, my thoughts spiraling out like a net cast into the darkest waters, hoping for a catch of clarity that I can't fully explain now. But they think you possess something vital, something that could disrupt their plans, Lucas replied, and my heart sank, the words coloring my reality in shades of dread. But you can't let fear paralyze you. You are stronger than you think. As if on cue, the elevator jolted again, a heart-stopping reminder of the situation's gravity. My throat felt tight, the panic swirling within me threatening to surface. Stronger? I repeated softly, clutching the memories of my writing. I recalled that small cafe, the kindness the barista had shown. Maybe what I'd written did matter. Maybe I had a story worth telling, one that could break through the chaos, but just as hope began to weave itself back into my mind, the persistent shadows of doubt surged forth. What if I couldn't escape this? What if Jack and everyone else were lost to a fate darker than I could fathom? I felt the rise of tears behind my eyes and fought them back. This was not the moment to succumb, Lucas. I breathed, my voice a whisper. Can you promise me if we get out, if I'm reunited with them, can you promise they'll be safe? I don't want to make promises I can't keep, he said, his tone unyielding but tender. But I will do everything in my power to protect you. To protect them. The sincerity in his voice wrapped around me like a warm embrace, thawing the icy fear coiled in my chest. Thank you, I breathed, still holding on to the fleeting strands of hope. For a moment, the world outside my steel prison felt a distant collage of uncertainty, flickering light, and muffled chaos. I closed my eyes, and in that moment of darkness, my memories surfaced like buoyant buoys in a storm. I thought of Jack, his unwavering support. I thought of small moments, late nights spent laughing, coffee-stained shirts from sloshed cups, the way he always encouraged me to confront my fears. Would he fight for me if I couldn't fight for myself? Jack believes in me, I said softly, more as a reassurance to myself than to Lucas. He always has. Good. Hold on to that. It's your anchor. But before I could reply, the elevator doors rattled violently, and a fierce light burst through the cracks, casting shadows that danced around me. My heart skipped as the reality of the moment pressed in. Was this the end or a beginning? And then came a voice, low, confident, breaking through the chaotic sounds above. "Is anyone in there?" "Over here," I shouted, desperation lacing my words as I banged against the door. "Please. Get me out." The figure behind the voice materialized, a blur of movement as they quickly assessed the situation. I couldn't see their face, but something about the determined silhouette filled me with a new flamed hope. "Hang tight. I'm going to get you out." The voice was enveloped in authority and urgency, the anguish of my situation momentarily forgotten as they worked quickly to pry the doors open. Suddenly, another crash echoed, the elevator lurched again, and I felt panic rise anew, the fragility of this salvation vibrating against my skin. "Don't let go," I shouted to the figure, fearing the momentum might consume us both. "Trust me." They called back, strength infused into those words. All at once, the doors began to yield, creaking open to reveal light that felt blinding, saturated with a kaleidoscope of emotions. But in that moment, as the shimmering ray broke through the darkness, I was overcome with a sense of foreboding. What lay beyond that threshold? What consequences awaited me in a world that had spiraled out of control during my absence? And just as my eyes adjusted, I caught a glimpse of a flash, a trademark suit, a familiar face, eerily poised, standing just beyond the opening. "Welcome back," the figure said, an all too familiar smirk tugging at the corners of their mouth. And with it came the realization, I was being pulled back into a narrative far larger than my own, one that intertwined with forces I had never imagined, each moment teetering on the edge of betrayal. The chaos was only beginning, and as I stepped into the world once again, uncertainty washed over me like an ocean tide. My heart raced not only from fear but also at the knowledge that the true fight was only just unfolding. The previous light that spilled into the elevator was swallowed by an oppressive shadow the moment I stepped out. The figure before me, polished and composed, embodied an unsettling serenity amid the tumult that had just ensued. I fought through the disorienting noise, which suddenly rendered the world a cacophony of urgency. "Alex," he said, his voice cool and laced with an edge I failed to grasp, "there's no time for pleasantries." I recognized him immediately. Ethan Harrington, the billionaire whose donations had kept the community center running, the same man who'd visited my creative writing classes occasionally, his presence imposing yet oddly grounding. A man whose gaze made me question every syllable I wrote. "Ethan," I stammered, my mind racing to process the implications of his presence. What was he doing here? Did he know about my predicament? Did he somehow orchestrate this moment of chaos? "Right now, we need to move. There's a lot you're unaware of," he urged, a flash of urgency flickering in his eyes that contrasted sharply with his measured demeanor. As I started to follow him through the door, the echoing tremors of the building reminded me of how fragile safety was. Just moments ago, I had been cocooned in uncertainty, clinging to hope. Now, I felt a new wave of uncertainty suffocating my resolve. Ethan led me down a hallway that pulsated with energy, frantic footsteps rushing to make sense of what had just collapsed above. The air was thick with tension, and for every person I passed, I could feel the stories of their distress and resilience mingling with my own. "Tell me what's going on," I demanded, finally shaking off my shock. "What plans do they have for me?" "They believe you possess information critical enough that it could disrupt their agenda," he replied, his gaze fixed ahead but carrying the weight of something unsaid. "They've already taken steps to exploit that, and they won't stop." Bile rose in my throat. "What kind of information?" Ethan stopped abruptly in front of a stairwell, his expression tensed, sharper than before. "You need to trust me, Alex." Was there a vulnerability hidden in those words? A call for earnestness that seemed out of character for him? Just then, another crash fell from above, a sonorous reminder that danger lurked within the walls we were attempting to navigate. The ground shook slightly, adrenaline rushed through me as I cast a glance back to the elevator, my sanctuary only moments before. "What if I can't trust you?" I asked defiantly, drawing from the memory of Jack's unwavering belief in my voice, echoing in my mind like a beacon. "What if you're part of this mess?" Ethan turned towards me, a flicker of something I couldn't name passed through his eyes. "You think I want this chaos? You think I'm part of anything but your escape?" The sincerity in his voice caught me flat-footed. I had seen his face before, polishing the image of a philanthropist. But now, standing with nowhere else to run, I took a moment to reconsider. His anguish felt palpably a reminder of my own terror, and suddenly the world beyond our hurried steps seemed less like a threat and more like a frantic race against time rather than a pursuit of some dark ambition. Trust isn't given, it's earned. I breathed the words out, testing their weight. How can I earn back my faith in people? I understand, Ethan responded, pushing through the door at the stairwell, unyielding in his pace. But that's a journey we may not have time to tread. Just know they will come for you. Pushing aside my apprehension, I followed as he took the stairs 2 at a time, the flight echoing with the more incredible weight of unresolved fears. Jack, Lucas, my space between reality and fiction. Where was everyone? Were they safe? As we reached the building's exit, the shouts and shuffling grew louder, rippling against the street an alternate reality, one where my fears came to life. Ethan pushed the door open, and light flooding in was blinding. The outside air ripped through the hallway, catching me off guard and forcing me to breathe again. The contrast was stark. The chaos outside was vibrant, full of people scuttling away from the proximity of danger. Faces I had never seen melded together in panic and determination. Yet, as I stepped out, I caught sight of a familiar frame in the distance, brandishing panic on his face. Jack, Alex. He shouted, breaking through the noise, and my heart leaped as he rushed towards me. Jack. I cried, the floodgate of emotions crashing as I surged to meet him. But just as I reached out, Ethan's grip tightened around my arm, halting me mid-leap. Don't. He cautioned, his voice slicing through my longing like a shard of ice. Something was moving in the shadows behind him, darting closer. What is it? I gasped, anxiety snaking through my veins. Jack stood frozen, eyes widened with confusion, battling against an invisible tether. We need to go now. Ethan barked, urgency thrumming in his every word. My eyes darted between Ethan and Jack, the chaos forcing me to make an impossible choice. The darkness lurking behind us loomed closer, an unwelcome reminder of the arbitrary fate I was intertwined with. I could feel it closing in, the cruel irony that to step back into safety, I may have to let go of the person who meant the most. Alex. Jack yelled, but the words blurred into the din of approaching footsteps. I looked back to Ethan, the unspoken truth hanging heavy in the throbbing space between choices, and just as I felt the threads of fate tightening, panic illuminating Jack's features, I understood the very essence of crisis. Sometimes survival means running away from the familiar, but by doing so, would I be giving up all that I once held dear? Each breath felt precarious, and my heart thundered with the decision I was about to make. The shadows behind us flickered closer, and I caught a glimpse of something, that familiar grin, now more chilling than welcoming. As I turned towards Ethan, lost in a whirl of contemplation, Jack's anguished shout pierced through the tempest of chaos, "Don't leave me." And in that moment, the unbearable reality settled. Whether I ran with Ethan or stayed by Jack's side, the outcome would irrevocably change the landscape of my life forever. The world around me spun as Jack's desperate plea echoed in my mind. Time stretched thin, a fragile thread pulling me in 2 directions. I felt the chill of Ethan's grip on my arm, a lifeline tethering me to the unknown, while Jack's frantic eyes glistened with a mix of fear and disbelief that begged for connection. "Alex. Please." Jack's voice trembled, reverberating in the chaos around us. It ignited the warmth of memories, the laughter shared, the dreams whispered late at night, the solid foundation of trust we had built together. How could I leave that behind? But alongside those memories came a different kind of clarity. Ethan's presence signified urgency, and the threat so close behind us was an oppressive reminder of the stakes. Everything felt charged, but I couldn't shake the nagging doubt that surged like an undercurrent pulling at my conscience. Was I about to sacrifice something irreplaceable for mere survival? I fought to clear my eyes of the tears that threatened to spill, turning again to Ethan. "What's happening? Why is this happening?" I stammered, my voice breaking under the weight of my uncertainty. "There's no time," he insisted, desperation creeping into his tone as he started to pull me back. "Trust me, Alex. They will not stop coming for you. We have to move." His urgency scratched at my resolve, but another tug in my heart, the deeper one embodied by Jack, reminded me I wasn't facing this alone. "What do you know that I don't?" I shot back, not knowing if I wanted to hear the answer. Before Ethan could respond, a voice cut through the chaos, sharp and familiar. "Step away from her, Harrington." I turned, wide-eyed, to see Lucas, my best friend, emerging from the crowd with an imposing presence, a whirlwind of green from his old army jacket contrasting sharply with the metallic dystopia that had consumed us. His eyes met mine, a hurricane of concern battling with steely resolve. "You can't just take her and run. Lucas, it's not safe." Ethan began, but Lucas' stance hardened. "You pushed us all into this nightmare fighting the shadows of betrayal," Lucas retorted, stepping closer, his gaze slicing through the tension. "And now you want to drag Alex into your mess. This is not just your game anymore. You need to let her make her choice." "Lucas, no," I whispered, panic inching back in as the implications sank in. "You don't understand. There's a real threat." "Then let me help." His eyes flickered back to Jack, uncertainty lingering. "Let us help." Together, with the world swirling around me, I stood caught in an emotional crossfire. The shadows behind Ethan tightened, a restless anxiety brewing in the air, while Jack's pleading gaze and Lucas' steadfast form offered a glimmer of solidarity amidst the torment of indecision. "Alex!" Jack shouted again, desperation igniting his voice. "Don't let him take you. I can protect you. You can trust me." The cacophony of emotions joined forces, and my heart raced wildly as I felt the brutal weight of my choice. Could I trust Ethan when only moments ago, he seemed like part of the chaos? Yet, the past loomed large, a past filled with uncertainty and unexplained gaps that Jack had always helped me fill. I felt the trust one had in Jack forming a protective haven around me, but would it hold against the storm threatening our lives? "Ethan, what do you know? What's their plan?" My voice shook as I stood rooted, grasping the fragile strands of my choices. "I can't leave without knowing." Ethan's expression softened, a flicker of reluctant honesty passing through his gaze. "They're after more than you know, information, yes, but also something else, something you can't even comprehend. I don't have time to explain. Just know that they will stop at nothing to get what they want from you." With those words, an uneasy understanding dawned, something lurking beneath the surface of this turmoil that could change everything. It was the weight of choices unmade, of futures still holding unturned pages. Suddenly, a loud explosion rang through the streets, sending a wave of panic crashing over the crowd. It jolted me out of my thoughts, the moment fractured, as debris fell nearby, rattling everyone to life. The shadows, once merely an emotional backdrop, were now in imminent danger, racing toward me, faster. Ethan's voice penetrated the chaos, dragging me back to the urgency at hand. "I'm trying to save you, but saving came at a price," and even as the fear rose, there was an unyielding warmth in the hope I could feel from Jack and Lucas. "If you want out, then you need to choose now," Lucas shouted, the tension bleeding into the crevice of urgency that held me captive. I took a deep breath, the air tinged with a hint of smoke and possibility. In that moment, I felt the delicate threads of fate sharply twist between me, Jack, Ethan, and Lucas, all of our futures entwined in a precarious dance of choices made under the dark web of uncertainty. "Alex!" Jack implored, but the shadows were closing in. Their sinister laughter echoed in the background as the world conspired against us. The reality settled in, thick and unyielding. My choice was not only about survival, it was about whom I would become. And as I stood teetering on the edge of that revelation, I knew that whichever path I took would irrevocably alter not only my life but the lives of those I loved. Go! I screamed, the urgency exploding within. "Run! Get to safety!" My heart shattered at the sound of my own words, a sacrifice forged from desperation. But beneath the weight of loss surged a flicker of defiance. This wasn't over. The fear and love mingled, igniting a flame of resiliency, a promise that no matter what happened next, I wouldn't stop fighting. And then, just as Ethan twisted to pull me away, a blinding roar erupted from the shadows, and in an instant, everything changed as a figure lunged into our midst, piercing the fragile facade of our choices, unveiling a shocking revelation that would startle us all to our core. The air crackled with energy, an inescapable force that seemed to shift everything in an instant. The figure that emerged from the shadows sent a ripple of shock through me, one that felt eerily familiar yet utterly foreign. My heart raced, pounding against my chest like a drum signaling impending chaos. "Step away from her!" the figure shouted, voice booming with authority. Disbelief gripped me as I recognized the shape Reese, my estranged father, whose presence had haunted my memories with both longing and resentment. The years of separation narrowed into a single tense moment, and I couldn't understand how a human could be both the bringer of comfort and chaos in my life all at once. "Dad," I whispered, confusion lacing my voice. How could he be here now, with a dangerous storm brewing around us? The fragmented pieces of my life felt like they were screaming for attention, and I felt lost in the echoes of their demands. "Alex, I need you to trust me." His eyes, always so piercing, scanned the crowd, glossed with dark intent. "There isn't much time." I wanted to resist, to defend my loyalties to Jack and the bond one had forged with Lucas and Ethan, but the weight of his words anchored me in place. Time was slipping away, and I could feel the pulse of urgency emanating from everyone around me. Fear, hope, defiance mingling in the chaos. Ethan stared at Reese, his expression a mix of suspicion and disbelief. "You've been hiding this entire time and now you think you can just show up and claim her?" "It's more complicated than that, Harrington," Reese shot back, his voice unwavering as he moved closer to me, shielding me from the encroaching shadows that flickered from the alleyway. "I thought I could keep you safe, Alex, but it appears I was wrong. They're coming for us all." "Who?" I cried out, frustration bubbling beneath the surface as conflicting emotions warred within me. My father had left me to navigate the world alone, the very world that seemed hell-bent on tearing us apart. The connection between us, however real, felt fraught with memories of abandonment. How was I supposed to trust him now, those who want to exploit your abilities? The ones who see you not as a person but as a pawn. His words dripped with urgency, as if they were the last thread keeping us connected in this maelstrom. "We need to move, and we need to move now." Behind Reese, Ethan's grip tightened around my arm, confused and wary, and I felt the tether between us begin to snap. Jack, watching from a distance, his usually vibrant countenance now dull with dread, shouted passionately, "Don't listen to him, Alex. He's the reason you've been in danger this whole time. He abandoned you." "Stop." Lucas stepped forward, voice rising above the loud chaos. "We don't have time for this. We need to decide now." The shadows were growing thicker, and with them, the sense of imminent danger hung palpably in the air. As pieces of my past collided with my present, my heart felt like it was being torn across the battlefield. I stood there, paralyzed by fear and indecision while the noise intensified, deafening me to my own thoughts. Suddenly, a loud crash interrupted the tension as graffited concrete debris tumbled to the ground. The chaos of the collapsing world enveloped us completely. Tremors of terror rippled through the gathered crowd, each one marked with the unmistakable urgency of survival. "Get away from the entrance!" Ethan shouted, pulling me back as shockwaves pressed against us. Panic spread like wildfire, people began to flee in all directions. In a whirl of limbs and desperation, I felt the fight against instincts holding me tethered. The powerful urge to run, to hide, clashed violently with the need to confront the truth of my circumstances. "It's now or never." Reese urged again, his voice impassioned but tinged with an unmistakable plea. "If you want to know the truth, you'll have to come with me." And then, as if the universe was conspiring against all reason, I caught Jack's eye one last time. His gaze, filled with despair but also a flicker of something deeper, sent a jolt of electrifying warmth through my veins. "Alex," he started, but the words fell silent as the ground shook once more. Ethan's voice broke into my thoughts, stern and resolute. "I don't know what your father is offering, but I do know who will protect you, who loves you. Choose to trust the right people." That I inhaled sharply, weighed down by the expectations of love and loyalty, unsure how to navigate the tangled web of life unraveling before me. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a veil of shadows over our circle of turmoil, marking the moment where choices would dictate our fate. As Reese, Jack, Ethan, and Lucas swirled around mid-air, voices clashing in an uproar of emotional pleas and echoes of the past. I felt that final bolt of responsibility shoot through me. The chaos around us threatened to swallow us whole, and still, I stood frozen, knowing that my decision could seal our fates. Just then, the blinding crack of lightning lit the darkening sky, and with it came a shocking twist of breathless revelation that sent my heart tumbling into my stomach. I snapped my gaze back to Reese just in time to see his eyes widen, a warning, a truth unveiled. "They know, Alex," he whispered fiercely, urgency spilling into the air. "They know you're the key." In that instant, everything I thought I understood shattered, and I braced myself for the storm ahead, the storm that promised not just danger, but the raw, unyielding confrontation with the truths I had buried and the bonds that might just save us all. The shadows darted around us, twisting and curling like dark tendrils seeking human warmth, yet all I felt was cold dread seep into my bones. I had learned to be wary of storms, they often masked the real turmoil brewing underneath. And now, as the tempest raged both outside and within, I felt the walls of my world begin to constrict, leaving me with a mirrored reflection of turmoil. Reese's gaze bore into mine. It was fervent and desperate, yet laced with the remnants of paternal care that had been absent for far too long. I could feel the weight of his past mistakes pressing like a boulder on my chest. "Alex," he urged, raising his voice against the riotous wind. "They're coming for you. Time is running out." Ethan's tense grip on my arm faltered at the mention of danger. "What do you mean they know? Who is coming for her?" His voice didn't mask the tremor of fear underlying his accusation, but I couldn't unravel the threads of our situation. Uncertainty flickered dangerously in our shared space, pulsing like the storm overhead. Before Reese could respond, Jack broke through the cacophony, his voice anchored with defiance. "You think we'll just run away with him? After all the lies?" His body was tense, brimming with urgency, yet a deep searing hurt marked his tone. "You don't even know what you're getting into." I turned to Jack, searching for the familiar comfort in his azure gaze, but all I found was a torrent of turmoil that could swallow us whole. The thunder cracked sharply overhead as if emphasizing the fracture in our alliance, sending another pulse of fear through the crowd that I felt as if the world had gone dull, every color faded into grays and shadows. Yet, in that darkness, a glimmer of clearer choice emerged. "Maybe it's time I start digging into these shadows ourselves," I murmured, more to myself than anyone else. I craved clarity, I craved grounding. "What was that?" Ethan said, pulling me back to his fierce intensity. "No, Alex. Don't let his words play tricks on you. He's using you." My heart wavered between the tether of safety that Ethan offered and the tangled history of my father, a connection riddled with ambiguity and longing. But I needed to understand just how deep this rabbit hole went. Curiosity, albeit dangerous, was taking shape within me. "Trust is earned," Reese interjected, his voice strained but earnest. "But there's no time for that. We're on borrowed time already." He looked towards the path beyond the alley, urgency etched into every line of his face. "They might already be here." Echoing murmurs of concern flickered through the crowd, and instinctively, my gaze swept the street, filled with panicked souls fighting their own inner battles. A small child, hand clutched in desperation by a parent, caught my eye, and it struck me, crystalline and vivid. The fight was no longer just about my journey or survival, it was about everyone, the echoes of humanity secured in the heart of chaos. Suddenly, a sharp gasp drew my attention back to Reese, who had pulled out a small device from his pocket, a communicator of sorts. The beeping sound was jarring against the backdrop of frantic voices and screeching sirens, and my pulse quickened as he began to speak, the intensity of his expression carving a path of urgency through the fading light. "Where are you?" he demanded, his tone relentlessly authoritative, yet a crack of vulnerability seeped through. "Are you sure they've arrived?" Jack's fingers brushed against mine, reigniting a flicker of warmth amid despair. "Alex, listen to me," he urged, his voice low yet burning with conviction. "You don't have to do this. You can choose to stay with us. We can figure this out together." but before I could form a response, the palpable tension shattered as a sudden surge of individuals emerged from the darkened alley, figures cloaked in shadowy garments adorned with insignias I recognized from stories passed through whispered conversations. The gang of mercenaries, heartless echoes of power hungry for my abilities. They're here, Reese breathed, barely above a whisper, his eyes locked onto mine, a whirlwind of fear and determination swirling within them. Alex, we have to go, now. As the mercenaries closed in, the air thick with threat, I realized that standing still was no longer an option. I had to move, to choose, yet the gulf between the diverging paths grew exponentially, and I was held captive between the hope embodied in Jack and the ominous reality brought by Reese. In that moment of paralyzing indecision, flashes from the past flooded my mind, the laughter of childhood, the comfort of home, the exquisite pain of betrayal. The truth of who I was twisted back into me, a daughter torn between the love she craved and the truth that lay in the storm's heart. Then, just as we began to back away, a piercing scream reverberated through the air. My heart dropped into an abyss of icy realization. Someone in the crowd had been caught in the inevitable crossfire of those closing in, their struggle marking a transition I couldn't bear to witness. And amid the chaos, a sudden flicker of understanding dawned. I wasn't just the key to this conflict, I had the potential to be its savior, its greatest downfall. My power already drew them in like moths to a flame, and now, blossoming fear intertwined with a perverse thrill. What I realized was that this decision would no longer be solely about escaping danger or understanding truth. It would manifest the very essence of who I was meant to be. As the mercenaries advanced, my heart racing in tandem with the thunder overhead, I raised my chin defiantly, knowing now that whatever landscape lay ahead would demand every ounce of courage I could muster. Together, then, I murmured. But inside, knowing all too well that the very notion of together might soon unravel as dark shadows danced on the precipice of light. As the mercenaries closed in, I felt the weight of my choice settle on my shoulders like an anvil. Together, I had whispered, yet which path did that promise truly lead us down? In this swirling storm of chaos, uncertainty, and danger, I could feel the flickering light of hope and the looming shadow of betrayal looming large over my heart. Jack looked at me, determination etched across his face. "Stay close," he said, drawing nearer, his eyes fierce and guarded. Lucas mirrored his stance, standing on my other side, ready to defend. The three of us formed a fragile line, but it felt stronger than anything else I had known. Reese shifted closer, his expression a flash of urgency. "We can't let them take you. They'll twist your dreams into nightmares." "There's no hiding from the truth now," I breathed, my voice shaking, yet steadied with resolve. My eyes flitted back to the advancing figures, cloaked in darkness, their intent as clear as the tension ringing through the air. As they closed the gap, fear tangled with something greater, realization. I was no longer just a girl unsure of her place in the world. I was the architect of my fate. The roots of my dreams ran deeper than fear, they were burrowed with love and belief. Jack's faith in me and Reese's desperate plea pierced through the chaos as intricately as a melody. The remnants of our shared past clung to me, urging me to step into the unknown once more, to confront the shadows without faltering. Suddenly, the distance between us and the mercenaries evaporated, and the air became charged with electricity. The figures loomed closer, their eyes glinting with menace. I could see the insignias on their garments, a design I had seen in my father's files, the same emblem tied to shady corporate dealings, a name intertwined with whispered threats and veiled threats, the Syndicate. "Remember who you are," Jack shouted, breaking through the tension, grounding me as I swirled into uncertainty. "You have the power to choose how your story is written." That was the truth I had been missing. With every heartbeat, memories of my past rushed back, me mother, my dreams, the encouragement of the barista at that cafe, and the raw, unfiltered beauty of my experiences. I owed it not only to them but to myself to reclaim my narrative. "Stop!" I shouted, my voice rising above the storm. I stepped forward, shaking off the grasping shadows threatening to overtake my thoughts. "You'll not take me down a path I refuse to walk." The advancing figures hesitated, surprise flickering in their eyes. Reese shot me a look that simmered with admiration and fear, but now I saw clarity in the strength of my convictions. "I'm not afraid of what you want me to become," I declared. "My story doesn't end with you. You don't know what you're dealing with, child," one of the mercenaries snarled, stepping forward, eyes narrowing as if trying to intimidate me. I took a deep breath, feeling energy crackle around me. "No," I said firmly, standing as tall as I could. "You don't know the power of what I can create. I refuse to be your pawn." The murmurs of the crowd grew, the pulse of hope moving through the uncertainty like a beacon, lighting the way. Strength pooled at my core, blending with the memories I had almost buried beneath doubt. The flickering flame of creativity, the ink of my potential, they can't extinguish it now. Jack, Lucas, and Reese stood stalwart by my side. In this beautiful constellation of relationships, we represented the possible, the unbreakable alliance forged through trust, loyalty, and aspirations. Without warning, the mercenaries lunged as one, intentions twisted toward destruction. But with an instinctive flick of my wrist, I felt a rush of energy swell within me, emanating from the very fabric of my being, a burst of raw, forgotten power. "No!" I shouted again, and the words transformed into a powerful wave that pushed against the menacing force, knocking them off course, grounding their sinister approach in a flurry of chaos. The shock echoed as they stumbled back, eyes wide with disbelief. In this moment, in this space without boundaries, I allowed the feelings I had once hidden deep within meth dreams I had almost abandoned to surge forth. My voice became a vessel of unbridled creativity, awakening the stories trapped inside me. You cannot silence what is meant to soar. And at that moment, it felt as if the very walls of the world expanded, revealing layers of strength intertwined with every choice I had made, a waterfall of dreams cascading into reality. As the mercenaries reeled, each member of our alliance began to mirror this awakening. A whirlwind of determination spun around us, Jack and Lucas pushing back against the tide. Reese's eyes broke the frantic haze, catching every pulse of my resolve as we coalesced together, our energies mingling like colors on a canvas. For the first time, as chaos unfolded around us, I felt the threads of despair dissolve into a tapestry of connection. It wasn't about escape or isolation, it was discovering I was far from alone. We were a beacon of resilience shining against the dark, aching for a world that would listen when we shared our stories. The mercenaries floundered, not prepared for the strength built on empathy, trust, and truth. They had underestimated not only me but the spirit of those who have fought for their voices. And as I raised my hands, I could feel the power of what I could create pulling together in a climax of purpose. "You'll regret underestimating me," I stated, summoning that energy to push back once more. "This is my journey, my story." Suddenly, a fire ignited around us, swirling like a cyclone, illuminating not just our present but also the path we had carved through obstacles and uncertainty. The vision of who I was to rise and reclaim my narrative merged with a collective force vowing to build a world that would reflect our truth, the truth of many. But the fight was just beginning. I saw Jack, Lucas, and Reese beside me, and I realized it didn't end in that moment, it was the birth of something new. With the flicker of hope boiling over, I prepared to face the uncertainty ahead. The last tendrils of shadows shrank back in fear, and this time, I would not yield. Together, armed with our stories, we could redefine our fate. With one final breath, I shouted, "Let this be the dawn of our journey, not an end. I will choose my path, and you will not erase my voice." A resounding cheer erupted through the air, a symphony of liberation sweeping away the remnants of doubt, the echoes of broken pasts intertwining with our unified present, each word like an armor shielding us from the darkness lurking beyond. I turned toward Jack, trying to find shelter in those piercing blue eyes, and saw his unwavering commitment to fight beside me. There were layers of unspoken bonds we'd built, moments where love flourished not in safety but in the beautiful chaos that had melded our stories together. As we gathered our strength, I felt invincible, not by my own power but by the collective force of us all together. We would champion our truths against all shadows ready to emerge. "This is just the beginning," I murmured, hope igniting in my heart like a banner raised aloft. And as we plunged into that fiery uncertainty, I knew we were unstoppable. Our stories mattered, and together, we would soar beyond. Each heartbeat was a promise, a declaration that our narratives interwoven and ever-growing would never be silenced again. In a world eager to quench dreams, we would burst forth like a rising sun, and I believed deep down that as long as I had my voice, I could transform fear into power, shadows into stories. And we would rise. Always.